Thomas here with Much Props, going to give you another how-to video. I get lots of suggestions from time to time, a lot of things that I don't really know much about, and a lot of comic book suggestions, and a couple of people have suggested that I do Dr. Fate. Now I realize that there is a recent movie that came out with Dr. Fate in it, and there have been tons of iterations of his helmet over the years, and I thought, why not pick and choose the parts I like the most, add a little bit of my own flair to it, and make something unique instead of an exact replica. Yeah. So today we are going to make a custom Dr. Fate helmet out of foam. Let's get to building. I started this process by thumbing through dozens of reference images and finding a helmet shape that I liked. After making my own pattern and tracing it onto poster board, I'm ready to start the build. To get to this point, it took me about 3 hours or so worth of work. Now I traced my pattern onto some 6mm EVA foam, which you can download the free pattern for in the description below the video. If you decide to make the helmet, make sure to read the cover page for extra instructions and share your builds with me on social media. My social media links are also in the description of the video. With my pattern traced onto the foam, it's time to cut the items out. I do a rough cut first to make the pieces more manageable to rotate around on my cutting surface. Keep the pattern close by so that you can reference it when making angle cuts. This first piece I cut has a 45-degree angle cut inward, which means you just tilt the handle back, push it into the foam, and cut with the blade tilted along that line. To help form the foam to fit the shape a little better, I need to form the parts with a heat gun. You just need a round object to push over as you're heating up the parts. I use a glass dome that is supposed to cover my back porch light, but let's be real, at this point it forever will be a foam anvil for me. Heat up little sections at a time on both sides of the foam and push it over the round object until the foam cools. It's okay if you don't get the shape perfect, as you can also shape it more after the parts are glued together. I applied contact cement to my edges, let it sit for a couple of minutes until it was no longer wet, and then began tacking stuff together. I like to work one half at a time so that I don't rush myself. Another thing I typically do is align my pattern together to use as a reference image when attaching pieces. When you start gluing stuff together, the reference marks may seem a little unclear unless you've got something right there to go off of. With both halves glued up, I put a layer of contact cement down the middle, let it dry, then glue them together also. When gluing up helmets, at least for me on these long curved edges, it helps to tack the front and the back of the part together so that it's not like flopping all around. Follow the registration marks and do your best to keep the outside surfaces flush with each other, but if you don't, you can always use a rotary tool to smooth it over later. Now time for the mohawk. On the pattern there is a dashed line with V's on it. This marking means that you should have a V groove cut on the inside of that part. This groove will help to bring the front end in at an angle and allow for the mohawk to come in and a point in the front. Once everything is tacked together on the perimeter, you can use the red overlay marks on the pattern to help you position the mohawk. You could stop here at this point and have a nice basic Dr. Fate helmet. I wanted to add some more details to make it a little more interesting. On some variations of the helmet, they had these really cool winged Egyptian Eye of Ra or Horus symbols. I made my own version of them to kind of fit on this helmet a little more, and I cut it out of some 4mm foam, traced it onto the helmet, then glued it up. I also went ahead and beveled some of the edges before I glued them on, because it's a little bit easier to manipulate the parts when they're not attached and close to other surfaces that I don't want marked up. I found these triangle-shaped EVA dowels at my local hobby store and decided to use them as the edge bevel on the front bottom piece. I cut an angle where they would meet each other in the front and used the same steps as before with the other glue ups, putting glue on both the parts, letting it dry, and then tacking them together. I believe this was a 20mm triangle EVA dowel. I also used a 10mm half dowel to go around the ears and the back of the helmet. I definitely could have stopped at this point and had a pretty cool helmet, but I wanted to push it another step further and make it a little bit more detailed. These layers really do give it some interest and set it apart from some of the other basic versions that I saw in the comics. I designed my own Dr. Fate cartouche on my computer and then had my laser cutter burn an engraving of it onto some 4mm foam. Then I traced the shape where I wanted it to go, cut out that into the base of my helmet, helmet and then sanded both pieces for a snug fit, gluing it into place wet so that I could position it. I set it in flush with the inside so that it had a nice 2mm recess on the outside surface. I also engraved some hieroglyphics onto a sheet and made a couple of other recessed areas in the same way. It wouldn't be my own style if I didn't add some battle damage while I was at it. I put a stone bit on my rotary tool and began gouging out marks all over the helmet. This is your opportunity to tell the story of your prop, and I love to make mine look extremely worn in. I also heated up some parts of the foam and pushed foil into it to make random pocks in the surface for texture. The more work you do here will stand out more in the paint job later. After heat sealing my foam, I hit it with 2 coats of Plasti Dip. For the paint job on this one, I figured it would be better to dry brush on some Rub and Buff gold paint than to just layer it with spray paint or fully with acrylic. I used a chip brush and scrubbed on lightly loaded bristles sporadically. I don't try to get full coverage as the recesses should keep some of that black base coat exposed. Dr. Fate usually has this nice reflective surface on his helmet, but because mine is heavily damaged, I thought it would look better all scuffed up and uneven. To make my recesses and overlays stand out just a little bit more from the other surfaces, I wanted to use a different shade and finish of gold. For this, I switched over to a gold metallic paint pen and covered the surfaces. It's a lot more shiny, and that variation will help the parts to stand out a little bit more from each other. For the lenses of the helmet, I decided to use some more of these LED panels that I've used in several other builds. It has a piece of vinyl with dots painted on it that diffuses some of the light across it, making the lenses look like they glow. It's really hard to see the effect with the bright studio lights on, but it does glow red when turned on, and when not, it's a white surface. I got these on Amazon. To attach them to the helmet, I hot glue them into position position, secure the wires with a little bit of foam over it so it doesn't rub against my face, and then I add an elastic pouch for the battery pack to sit in. With that, this build is done and ready for displaying / wearing / fighting people, or not. And we are finished. Here is the end result. Overall, I think it turned out pretty cool. I definitely like the choice I made to put in these little inlays with hieroglyphs on them. I think it gives it a nice extra little touch. And I definitely thought that the overlay on the eyes going up into the back kind of looked pretty cool. Plus the addition of the cartouche on the back, just, I don't know, those little details like that took a lot of extra time and effort, I think really make for the way it actually looks. If you don't want all that flashy overlays and extra work, you could literally just do the base helmet and be good. There are a lot of iterations to this helmet that you could definitely use this as a base to kind of springboard off and add your own details to. So yeah, maybe you'll try and make one of these yourselves and impress your friends with your ability to pick something from a comic book or movie or whatever, put your own spin on it, and just have fun making stuff. Yes. Maybe you'll get some, and inevitably they're gonna ask you, how'd you make that? You can give them one of these, tell them much props. I'm just gonna put this on and headbutt the crap out of you, so prepare yourself. All right, here we go. If you enjoy what I do here on YouTube and want to continue to see builds like this one, please consider joining these awesome people listed here with me over on my Patreon to build a bigger, better, more creative community together.